Hello, everyone. This is an honor and pleasure to have a special guest, Danny Brassell. It is an author and coach. He's a bestseller author of a book. He says that relationships start with motivation. And then welcome to DB Podcast, Danny. How are you doing?
Fantastic, Daniel. Thanks so much for having me. More importantly, thank you for spreading some joy in the world. I love your podcast.
Hey, thank you so much, Danny. It's a pleasure to have you in DB Podcast. Danny, I just read your biography that you were a motivational speaker, you're a coach. You know how people can get in touch with you, especially how you started to create that atmosphere to train people as called business owners. And then tell me more about yourself, Danny.
Thank you. That's I'll give you a long answer to a short question, Daniel.
Yeah.
So my autobiography would probably be entitled Pivots, because I've made lots of pivots in my life. For 30 years ago, I was a journalist. I got to cover President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential.
Wow, wonderful.
Yeah, I had a great job. I got to meet the editors of every major newspaper in America, and one editor of a major daily offered me the city beat for $16,500 a year. And then a friend told me they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles for $25,000 a year. So I became a teacher for the noblest of reasons, for the high pay. And I wound up loving teaching. I did that for many years, wound up becoming a professor. And then in 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam, and we lost everything overnight. And
I'm so sorry to hear that, Danny.
Oh, don't worry. I focus on the negatives, but I'm a positive person. I look at all the positives. First of all, my wife is my soulmate. She stood by me when probably she didn't need to. Second of all, I no longer value money as the end-all be-all, because you can learn that you can just lose it all overnight.
Yes, correct. I agree.
Third, I try not to judge other people, because if I was somebody looking at what I did, I would have said, you deserve that. But now I realize if you don't really know everything about a person, you don't know anything about a person. Fourth, I became a Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to admit, but the more I read the Bible, I realize I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus.
Wow.
And then
Praise the Lord.
I didn't want to file bankruptcy. Yeah. Excuse me, I didn't want to file bankruptcy, and my accountant said, well, you have to make this much more money to avoid bankruptcy. And so I started speaking on the side, and I hit the number right on the number that he gave. Well, the next year, Daniel, he gave a much higher number, and I hit that number right on the number. So in year 3, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And then basically, during one of the worst economic downturns in the world's history, I was able to build up a speaking business, which was highly profitable. And then in 2020, a thing called COVID happened, and people said, well, how's your speaking business? I'm like, oh, it's great. How I just lost 200 speaking engagements overnight because they shut down the world. So I pivoted again to become a coach. For years, people have been asking me to coach them, and I always resisted, because I'm a teacher that has very high standards for my students. I always want you to succeed, and I'm going to hold you accountable. Well, I found that working with entrepreneurs and executives is really one of my callings. I love working with them. They're very motivated, and I help them create what I call a well-crafted story. This is a speech that you deliver again and again to introduce yourself to new audiences. And I know we'll talk more about that, but that's I guess that's probably the shortest form of a long answer I could give. Sorry about that, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Danny. Danny, you say something that I would like to emphasize with that. You say that sometimes you're ashamed to tell people that you're Christians. That's happened in the business world, because people don't want to tell, because even in the world, people don't want to talk about Jesus. If we talk about business, just let's talk about business. But I tell you that the Bible says in the book of Romans, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. It's the power to save and transform life. Everything we do, when God is in the center, some good thing will happen. And then does it matter? You can be associated with a good businessman. That the businessman can have different beliefs. You could be Muslim, whatever. But saying you know that you believe in Jesus, you're not talking about religions, but your attitude, your actions, you will deal with him. Saying, yeah, name is different, because he's not very active, greedy for money. He sees the quality of his job, of his performance first, so that he just show who he is, and then money comes automatically. And that's why we just do the work, the right thing, people will see. And then sometime with the moment I put to tell people that I'm Christians, don't be ashamed, because the Bible says, if you confess me before men, I'll confess you before the Father. You know what I mean? So that happened. I'm glad that you said that. All right. And then Danny, you wrote a book, right? That the title is Leadership is About Motivation.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question now. What is the difference between motivation and inspiration?
Well, that's actually a great question, Daniel. I've learned I cannot motivate another human being to do anything that they don't want to do. All I can do is inspire them to motivate themselves. I'm a big believer in that true motivation comes from within. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so I would say that's the greatest difference between motivation versus inspiration, that you and I, we can inspire our audiences, but we can't motivate them to do anything that they don't want to do.
Yes, correct. And that comes from themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember I read that great leaders inspire people, and then to do things that they can do on their own through themselves. And then when you go to the leadership, is a big topic for the time being, because people don't want to hear the word boss. I am your boss. But if I am your leader, you see many images when you see the boss sit on a chair, say, do that, and then sit down. And you see another image when you see the leader, say, let's do it together. And he's the one that does the first step, you know what I mean? And that's why people for the 21st century has tendency to act as a leader, you know, to talk about more leadership. And then can you talk more about that great topic, leadership? Because as you're a coach or trainer, because people can learn something from you as a leader that you are. How do you understand that concept, leadership, in this new 21st century, please?
Well, a leader, I mean, all of us are leaders, if nothing else, ourselves at the very minimum. When you use the word boss, I'm like, yeah, some people have to fire their boss. They're doing a bad job of leading.
That's you.
I work with leaders, really, I empower them to transform their personal experiences into powerful business stories that inspire action, drive growth, and create lasting impact. See, I want to revolutionize business storytelling, the business world, by making authentic storytelling the cornerstone of impactful leadership. And so I really, it goes to what you were saying, the difference between inspiration and motivation is that the best leaders are able to inspire us. And that's why, you know, I love watching speakers. I watch 10 speakers a day. When people ask me, how do you become a good speaker? I'm like, well, there's two ways. First of all, you need to watch lots of speakers. I watch televangelists, I watch comedians, I watch politicians, I watch them in front of big rooms, in front of small rooms. I watch them internationally and nationally, in front of men, in front of women. And then secondly, if you want to become a great speaker, one of my mentors was a guy named Jim Rohn, and Jim used to say, you can't pay other people to do your push-ups. Translation, you got to do the work. And speak. And you're a perfect example of that, Daniel. I mean, how many of your friends have said, oh, I'd like to do a podcast, but they never did anything?
Yes, correct. I started.
Yeah, so I admire you, and look at how, watch your podcast, how it's transformed you, because I guarantee you, the first time you did this podcast, you stunk.
Yeah.
And the second time you did it, stunk, but you didn't stink as bad as the first time. And now you're a pro and you're really used to this, and it's made you much more comfortable. And that's why I always tell people, I've worked with some pretty famous speakers, but most of the people I work with, a lot of them are terrified of speaking. And really, most of them, all they're trying to do is to use speaking as a way to get more clients to their business. And I show them this is a teachable skill. If you work at it, we can make you a lot better. I mean, yeah, of course, there are some people that are born, they're natural storytellers, they're natural speakers, but really most of the people I work with, they're terrified of going on stage, and we're able to help them become pretty polished speakers.
I agree, Danny, because we are like a mine, like treasures hidden in the dirt, right? Sometimes gold could be hidden in dirt or rocky mountain. You have to go and dig that to get it out. After you have to purify the gold. In the same way, we have a lot of gifts and talents, potentials. We have to find someone to help us to refine our gifts, to refine our abilities to do things that we are called to do. And I can say there's no people born with excellent talent. They have to develop it. To develop up their gift and talent. Anyway, he could do it by themselves, but someone should be accountable to the person involved. As you just said, very important. You were there, and the first time you started as a leader, as a trainer or a coach, it's not good automatically. That takes time to refine your gift until you're able to do it better and help others do it better as well. This is a wonderful thing. And then what important that no one is born great. You become great. Only Jesus was born great. And then other human being is a process. And then I'm glad that you can help people be better in their own gift, in their own talents. Like public speaker, as you said before, like that. When I first started my own podcast, I started in a cell phone. And then I started in a cell phone. And then my first video I did was boy. And I got a friend of mine, and I sent that video. His name is Mark Bauer St. I can tell his name to the podcast. He's the one that encourages me to do that.
Great.
When I first said to him, say, it's too boring, Daniel, put some life in it. And the same told me that everybody could do what you're doing now, as you said, if they let them be coached by someone. And that's why Danny is there, folks that listen to me, to help you become better and your public speaking. As a coach, and he can help you understand the principle how to be a good speaker. Danny, can you talk most about your book that you have? People can go and find an Amazon, please.
Well, both Leadership Begins with Motivation and Misfits and Crackpots, these are the last two books that I've written. And the reason I wrote them was when I was a middle school teacher, I was the only teacher at the school that none of my students were ever tardy.
Wow.
We started off class by reading a Paul Harvey story. Now, Paul Harvey, when I was growing up as a kid, there was this guy, Paul Harvey. He'd come on the radio every day at 12:15 and he'd say, "I'm Paul Harvey with the rest of the story." And the whole 5 minutes, you're trying to guess who's he talking about or what's the company or whatever. And my students, they loved these. They were always curious to find out about them. But a lot of the stories that he wrote about were of people like Sears and Roebuck. Well, a kid today doesn't even know what Sears Roebuck is. And so when I wrote Leadership Begins with Motivation, I made stories about people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. But then after I wrote the book, Daniel, this was crazy. I read it. And completely unintentionally, most of my examples in that book were of white male Americans. And so Misfits and Crackpots, most of the stories in that book are of women, minorities, and international people. Because I think that all of us need to be inspired by looking at the stories from all over the world, not just in one segment of the population.
And then sometime we did examples of those people already get to the top. It is a way to inspire them, to motivate them, to say, if Jeff Bezos can do it, you can do it different ways. Because I believe after 10 years or 20 years, there will be another Elon Musk. There will be another Jeff Bezos. And there will be also another Danny Brassell. Because you're just leaving your legacy behind so that people can take over what you're doing. Because that's how you're training people. That's when you don't go with your gift. You don't go with your knowledge. You pass it down. You train others so that after 10 years, you can say, wow, there's someone that become like you that do the same thing that you're doing because you haven't trained them to do the same. And that's why people, some get chance, learn from others, they good things from others because they don't want to go with the gift, with the potential to pass it on to you. That's why that would listen to me to be a good coach, you have to learn more, get to the website of Danny Brassell. He has a lot of experiences about how to train you to get out what you have inside. Don't fear of the public, you know what I'm saying? And then Danny can help you to do that. Danny, how people can contact you if you have a website? And then
thank you for having me on and listening to my stories. I wanted to give everybody a free story guide. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, I'm going to give everybody their own complimentary storytelling blueprint. What this is a guide that takes you step by step through the process that I take all of my clients on how to create what I call a well-crafted presentation. What this does for you is it takes the guesswork out of creating a speech and shows you a research-proven method of how to become a more effective communicator. And what this means for you is you have the peace of mind that, hey, I can get a lot more clients by going out and doing the work. This is what we've talked about. If there's one thing I know about successful people, none of them sit on their butts all the time. Even Jesus, Jesus didn't wait for people to come to him to be converted. He went out and he did the work. One of my goals as a Christian is to make my Christianity a verb instead of a. Too many people love to get on their high horse and judge others when what we really need to be doing is serving others. And so if you go to storyguide.com, you'll get your complimentary story blueprint. And I really just wanted to thank you for bringing me today, Daniel. I always have loved your smile and your enthusiasm. And we need a lot more of you in the world, my friend.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Danny, for the encouragement word that you give it to me. One thing I learned from you said people can become a good speaker. I remember Les Brown said, whatever you pound in your mouth, you tell people who you are. That's mean know how to communicate with people. It's a wonderful gift. We need to learn from that and train, because when we talk, people can appreciate you. You can say, oh, forget about that. Even if you get good stuff inside of you, but if you don't know how to get it out, people will not listen to you for 1 second. And thank you, Danny. You have that wonderful gift to help people how to communicate. And I have to learn from you too. Maybe I could have been in your workshop one day, okay? To learn more from you. I contact you after the show. You can contact how can help me speak better and become a better communicator. Thank you, everybody, that been watching to DB Podcast with Danny Brassell. Reach out to Danny. He's a wonderful man. You learn from him because his desire is to train you to become better version of yourself. Thank you, Danny, for joining us. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Daniel. God bless.